Greetings all! I have reversed the tables. With me here, you may have seen I was a guest on his channel, Military History Visualized, is Bernard. Well,
Hello,
now
everyone.
you're on my turf. Haha, we are at
Yeah.
Tank Fest.
On your turf, and there's already a tank coming up, yeah.
So the reason we're holding these microphones up like this is that these tanks are kind of loud. But we
And-
thought it'd be interesting in the background anyway.
And we also kind of look like dorks sometimes.
The roar of the Meteor engine. Rolls-Royce's finest. Anyway, so we didn't have a topic of discussion when we sat down in front of the FlaK towers, but we just wandered on aimlessly, quite successfully, until we ran out of batteries. So we're gonna do it again. We're just gonna take up where we left off and just ramble and see where we end up, really. I mean, I guess the place to start, this is day 2, day 1 was a preview day, and as we were leaving we ran into a fan and his mother, who was a doctor, and we got onto the topic of what is the responsibility, I guess, for a historian, of placing equipment like tanks into the larger sociological sphere. So as a trained historian, fire away.
Well, there are different approaches here. As you said, you're doing more the technological side and you don't care about politics. And the very different approach for instance, which is happening in Germany, one of the recent books, Panzermechanisierung des Krieges from Perlmann, who is one of the leading military historians in Germany, which a book we mentioned in the previous video. He has a book written about the panzers, and one chapter is about panzer and war crimes. Now, I didn't read it yet, this chapter, but this is a very different approach than you would have.
Then I personally, yes. So my personal position is, if you want to learn about a tank, come to a tank museum where the experts are. If you want to learn about the Holocaust, go to a Holocaust museum or a World War II museum for a more general overview. There's only one place in the world you can really go for good tanks, and that's the Tank Museum. And I've been involved in debates online about this, with respectable historians that think that that is almost brushing aside the horrors of war, is by focusing on the technology and how awesome the tanks are, and we're divorcing the unfortunate truth is, these things are cool, but they're not here for us to have a nice day out.
Yeah, they are not built as toys, they are built for killing people. But we know this, and most people, other people I think, know this and acknowledge this. I mean, yesterday one of my Patreons told me, if there will ever be a war, he said he wanna be somewhere far away, ideally on a different world, on a different planet or something. So we are all like these engines and everything and these machines, but most people are rather aware of this. And I think the problem is, for some people, it's we have to be responsible more in a proactive way, like you could say in Germany more, and you have to mention it. You have to mention the war, you have to mention the Holocaust, and for others it's more like, okay, step back. I personally more on the line, I don't want to force people into politics. I mean, there's also this debate lately coming up with the Battlefield 5 trailer and historical accuracy. And for me, Battlefield was never historically accurate. And I think what most people have a problem is that politics are getting forced upon people that actually don't want to talk about politics. And especially, I'm not sure if Battlefield 5 is the right game for discussing politics. There are certain games like Papers, Please that have a different approach where I think it makes more sense. But there's a time and place for everything, and this is the balance, where to make it about technology, or do you introduce politics in a responsible manner. And for me, it's usually, if I talk about the whole war and the whole military aspect, some people actually then at one point will question, but what about the bigger picture? What about the Holocaust? What about the war crimes? And if they start themselves, then they're really interested and probably also will pay way more attention, unless you do it the other way, which is you have it all the time in there and people are to a certain degree just, well, I actually only want to know about the technical aspects now, because the other aspects, for instance in Germany or in Austria in school, they're there all the time. And I see comments from Germany or Austria, and they say, oh, well, thank you very much that you cover it. And I mean, one example was David Schahel wrote Barbarossa, Germany's Defeat in the East. I'm not sure if I got the title perfectly exactly. He noted that they I think they talked to students or something, and when they mentioned Kursk, people were thinking about the Russian submarine
Oh,
and
that's
not
saying,
the
yeah.
battle. I mean, the Russian submarine is named after the battle, basically, or the
Or the
location.
town, yeah.
And people were not thinking about this major battle, which more or less was one of the biggest tank battles in World War II history. So the Germans didn't notice to a certain degree.
So on your channel, what's your position on your channel? I mean, are there subjects you just won't touch, or how do you work on them?
Yeah, I basically have I basically have the policy, no political units. I will, for instance, I will mention them like, okay, there was this and this SS division here in this lineup, but I won't talk specifically about their units. Then also no atrocities, no war crimes, and also no Holocaust.
Does that account only for the German ones, or will you talk about, let's say, the Italian black shirt divisions?
Also for all the political units.
Okay.
For me, generally, I'm not very interested in the political units at all. I mean, I mentioned the NKVD also a bit, but yeah. And the thing is, I did the Barbarossa's blunders video.
Yeah.
And when I have to mention it, like there, the Vernichtungskrieg, I did it, and I had to write this paragraph. It was like 5 lines, and I had to do this like 3, 4, 5 times. It's still overly complicated. It's not very straight across, and it was like just a huge amount of work, and people still got it wrong. So it's basically, there's absolutely no incentive to do it. It's just gonna hurt me. And the other thing is, if I mention it in too much detail, YouTube will demonetize my video. And if you work 20 or 40 hours on a video, and then you probably see nothing in return in terms of money, I still run a business.
Yeah, you got to pay the bills, whether you like it or not.
So the decision is rather easy, because also you get less flack from the political side. It's just, if you mention it, it's just way more trouble and way more dangerous, because if you make an error, and you make errors occasionally, and you make it in this area, oh boy, in Austria, Germany, as a historian, you're in
serious
deep trouble. So might change at one point, but right now it's a bit dangerous.
Are you finding that you're getting more traction are you being recognized by the academic community as a historian on YouTube, as opposed to a historian writing books? You are working on a book, aren't you?
I'm not really completely started it. I mean,
okay.
I tried to write the first section, and
okay, you've had a good idea that you want to write a book.
Yeah, I got contacted. You want to write a book, and I said, yeah, why not? The one thing is I'm now in contact with some. For instance, I sent an email to one military historian about my Guderian video, because I used his book mostly as a source, and he said, yeah, it's quite nice. And the other thing is, I also interviewed DM Giangreco, the author of Hell to Pay and about 10 to 12 other books.
Yep.
But he's from the United States, so the academic community is very different in Germany than the United States or United Kingdom. For instance, we always learn in university, if in Germany or Austria you write a book that the general public can understand, you are ostracized by the academics. I mean, it's not that hard anymore. It's not, but I mean, for one professor, there was the rumor going on that he was actually from Germany, and he was at my university in Salzburg in Austria, and there was the rumor going on he didn't get a position in Germany because he worked too much with the radio. So this is pure rumor. I don't know if it's true or not, but it doesn't sound so far off. Of course, this is also changing now quite a bit. And the other thing is that, yeah, if I try to translate some academic quotes sometimes in German into English, and sometimes it's impossible because it's like 5 lines, and the grammar structure in German allows very complicated sentences, which is sometimes impossible in English.
Do you find that you get a large fan base in Germany and Austria?
I think Germany is now on the 3rd place. In ranking is still the United States is bigger, but also you have way more people. And combined with Austria, Germany and Switzerland, I think we're doing rather well. The thing is, of course, in Austria, Germany, since we are so trained on not making errors, any accent is frowned upon. So I would say about 50% of all negative statements about my accent are coming from Austria, Germany, which is also the reason because usually you dislike your own accent.
Okay, I mean, now you would have thought you'd have some advantages. I mean, I hate saying Selbstverlafett.
What?
Selbstverlafett.
Selbstverlafett.
The damn self-propelled anti-tank gun.
Selbstverlafett, yeah.
I can't say the damn thing. And it looks like Matilda 1 is being towed off the field by a forklift truck, which is
rather
a
unfortunate.
little bit, yeah, a bit of indignity there, I think. I mean, bear in mind, the vehicle is 1937 or so it's 80-something years old. I think it's allowed to break down.
Yeah.
What brings you to Tankfest anyway?
What brings me to Tankfest? Yeah, I was invited to do a meet and greet and something, and I also wanted to be here. Yeah. So I was, can we show up again, and record some footage, meet with you and Bismarck and some others. So yeah.
Yeah, poor old Matilda coming by now. Very sad. Is there anything particularly you wanted to cover or see while you were here?
I mean, the pants are free with the long barrel 50mm. It's quite obvious to see it. The Storks, or the Stork.
Oh yeah, they got an early one here. They have a short 75.
Yeah, the really wide, and the half tracks, the German half track scene, and because they're rather rare, and basically everything how a Tankfest goes on. Because for me, it's basically the first Tankfest, first meet and greet, and it was like yesterday I was like stumbling around here like a little puppy. So what I'm doing, and now it's okay. I'm a bit more comfortable.
You're starting to settle down. I am the same. This is like Tankfest number 6 or 7 for me, and I'm starting to see a lot of the same stuff again. I still get happy. I don't get quite so excited. Oh my God, a egg tiger! I wet my pants. Yeah, this sort of thing. That said, you are near, obviously being on the continent. You can easily make it to Millitrax in Uvalun, which is that big German vehicle convention.
I never heard of this one.
You've not heard of Millitrax?
No.
Where did you see the King Tiger videos that going around maybe about 2 months ago? The King Tiger driving?
No.
Okay.
He's gotta leave now.
No, I'm not gonna leave, but please bear with us while I educate the man. There is a museum in the Netherlands. It's got an official long name in Dutch that I don't know. It's sometimes known as the Marshall Collection because it was named after the American General Marshall. But most people just know it as Overloon, which is the name of the town. It was the site of a battle. First the British had a crack at a German unit, then the Americans had a crack at a German unit, and finally the Germans went away. But it is the location of a very large museum, particularly for logistics. So I like logistics. And if you're interested in trucks, all sorts of amazing trucks and support vehicles that you never think of existed. Okay, we're all familiar with a flatbed truck. We're all familiar with a truck that has a tanker on the back. And maybe a radio or a mechanic workshop truck. Or how about a field kitchen truck or a shower truck, or all these variations of trucks that were made and are important, but we don't think about them. Overloon has them. In addition to a pretty good armor collection. Now, being in the middle of Overloon Park, which was where the battlefield was, and the battlefield basically was left alone, they didn't build on it, they have a lot of open space. And every year they have this event called Millitrax, which encourages anybody with a working German vehicle to show up. So, I mean, it could be little Kuba wagons, lots of half tracks, but the French museum that have the Char B1 here today, they transported their King Tiger. Their Tiger 2 went over to Millitrax and drove around.
I never heard of it. How is this possible?
You need to talk to your fans. That surely you have some Dutch fans going, are you coming to Overloon?
I get emails for everything, but never. And I also I'm following you on Facebook and everything. I never saw a shared video or anything about this. So it's, and I follow also some other YouTube channels that, yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I will look it up definitely. It's, I guess, as in a tank, there's always a blind spot. Oh, there's the IS-3 coming up.
Oh,
that's a big one.
This is a special visitor from Belgium, of all places. Quite what an IS-3 is doing in Bastogne, I don't know, but they got one and it runs. Oh hell, this thing is impressive moving.
It comes with extra smoke.
Yeah, it makes its own smoke screen. I mean, I've seen many IS-3s, usually in museums and static, and I just have got a new respect for this thing, seeing it moving. It just looks so more menacing in motion than it does stationary. But I've always said that tanks are designed to run. They're not designed to sit in a museum and gather dust. And it's another philosophical question people have. If you have a rare vehicle, or especially if you have a rare airplane, should you fly it?
Yeah, with an airplane, it's way more difficult, I would say, because if something goes wrong, I mean, you saw just the Matilla was pulled off. So if an airplane, if it's crashing, you have a real problem because it's usually completely gone, and also the chances of injury are way higher. With a tank, only the tank can break down.
Yeah, there was guys that had, we got the only working Panther in wherever it is. And so, well, fantastic. Why don't you run it? Because if you run it, it'll break down. It's a Panther. Oh, okay, I'll take your point. But if you never run it, what's the point in having a working Panther? I mean,
yeah. So it's just part of the business, I would say, because if nothing can happen except the tank breakdown, I would definitely say run it.
All right. So, what are your lessons learned so far, halfway through day one of Tank Fest?
What my lessons? I mean, I'm quite surprised to see so many moving vehicles. Actually, it's like and quite amazed because usually I just saw them sticking around, and then now it's just like, okay, there's an IS-3 driving up, but besides that, I'm still in processing mode. So mostly some information came up from you and some others. It's like, okay, I need to remember that. But in terms of historical insight so far, you caught me a bit off guard here, I would say.
Now this is metal tracks with a metal road wheel. There's no rubber.
It's actually, I remember the ZSU in Puka, and I'm not sure how loud it was there, but on the video everyone is complaining that it's really loud, so the IS-3 actually feels pretty silent in comparison with these road wheels.
I don't know, that seems pretty loud to me. Now I was reading a book, it's not released yet, but it's by the gunner, Clarence Smolke I think is his name. He was the gunner on the Pershing at Cologne. So he's got a book coming out written by Brian Makos, who did Higher Calling, a couple of other books. And one of the things he mentioned was that in the dark, you could generally tell a German vehicle from an American vehicle because the Germans had a lot less rubber on their tracks and wheels, and they were a lot louder.
Yeah, this was the main problem with all the rubber, because Germany had a rubber shortage from the very beginning, and then I mean, if you look at the trade they did with the Japanese, with the submarines, quite often they brought up caoutchouc. They got rubber around, so because it was that important, and they had a synthetic one, but it was, I think, way less quality, and it was really expensive to make. And so I think, for instance, on the artillery pieces, they replaced the rubbers, for instance, on the wheels, on the Feldhaubitze, for instance, as far as I know later on. Yeah. Because in Puka I saw one and there was rubber on it, and I was like, okay, this must be an early model probably. So you can see the problems where every country has different resources and they adapt to it.
That said, it wasn't always the case. So you look at the Conqueror tank, which they have one, I think it's in, I don't know where they moved the Conqueror to. There's the Conqueror around here somewhere. It actually does have metal rims on a metal track with the rubber inside, like the World War II German vehicles. But I don't think Britain was really suffering a rubber shortage in 1955.
So what was the idea behind it?
They just wanted to reduce the wear.
Of course,
because you won't have to replace it as often.
So then they figured out that the noise signature is not that important, I guess.
And then they changed their mind again afterwards and went back to it. That maybe they figured it was better the wear on the track and wheel on the outside.
Oh!
So we got... Okay, this is different. We used to have a vehicle smoke system.
Is on fire.
Yeah. We used to have a vehicle smoke system on the M1, but we changed the fuel and it didn't work anymore, so we don't use it. Oh God, you can smell it, can't you?
This is not an intentional smoke screen, right?
No, that was. I'm pretty sure that was an intentional smoke screen.
Okay.
I'll take another look at it as it goes by. I mean, the Type 59 going around. Yes, it is a 59. There's a couple of giveaways here. Note, it's got the British 105 gun. And it's got the dome housing for the mushroom ventilator on the turret roof. So, no, not a Turan. It's not an Israeli mod. It's got fishgill armor on the T-72 as well. That's old.
What's that for?
Fishgill armor?
Yeah.
It right now it's kind of parallel to the hull, but if you unhook it, it's on springs that kind of spring out like a herringbone. And if an incoming heat round or a missile impacts from the side, instead of hitting the side of the tank, it's going to impact against this armor. And it's sufficiently far away from the front that it actually will have an effect. It's not like a side skirt, which is like 2 feet and it's too close anyway. It's not going to make any difference.
So the metal stream, the hot metal stream will
dissipate by the time it gets there. All right, so where else were we going? I can't remember. We started off with the history. We had that little issue with the UFO that got pulled. That was stupid. I don't need a historian to tell me that the Nazis did not build flying saucers. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was not deliberate. Oh, sorry, that was deliberate. That had no smoke there that time around.
Yeah.
Where are the Americans coming? Okay, so here are the Americans. Yay!
This is a big one.
It almost looks like it's a different generation to the IS-3. It almost looks like it looks less sleek and less menacing.
There's actually Austrians on the vehicle, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe they are. I think they come out here specifically for Tankfest just to drive the M60 and the M103. I don't know why.
Yeah,
what the reference
in
is
our
for
museums, as far as I know. Yeah.
An M103? I've been to the Austrian museum. There's no M103 there.
That makes no sense. Yeah.
I don't know if Austria ever used the M60. I mean, he used M47.
Yeah. We used the M60. We had the patent. We had the
which
Chaffee?
patent? Yeah, the M47 patent for sure.
Oh yeah, wait, I got it wrong. Yeah, I'm bad with with post-war tanks.
The Governator, and he bought his own tank. Is he popular in Austria?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, the thing is, for academics or something, they usually they have a negative view on him.
Yeah.
But for instance, I realized that one of my professors actually also he got an American talk to him. Are you envious? Because you don't like the Arnold Schwarzenegger back then, and then he fought around. And for instance, if you look at Arnold Schwarzenegger, in Austria, most people think about him a bodybuilder and a film star. But if you look at his history, I think he was a millionaire before he even started acting in something. So he had his shit together. And I looked a bit on Wikipedia and watched his talks and something, and I realized he's not dumb. Not at all. He's very smart.
Now, when we went to Iraq, he was at the time our commander-in-chief, as the California Guard. And so he came down to Fort Irwin, and he was great. I mean, he rolled up his sleeves, he threw away his notes, and he just spoke to us, tanker to tanker, as it were. It was great. Show off.
But it's again the thing, if people hear Arnold Schwarzenegger talk, they just hear bad English in Austria.
Yeah.
They hear their own accent, they hear that the English is not perfect, and then they usually we have this negative approach to this, yeah? I talked about this in a video. We have a different culture. For us, it's everything, avoid errors, and America is basically just do it. So, I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger said he was born in Austria but made in the United States, and I think it's very fitting, because, yeah, it's you have a different approach to stuff. And I really like that one, yeah, in many aspects. So there was a little bit of a scandal when he was the Governator, when he was the governor of California, because there was somebody on death row.
Yes, and he wouldn't commute it.
And of course in Austria we don't have death penalty. And
it was like the stadium, wasn't it?
And the politics, yeah, and some politicians said like, take away the name of the stadium, which we named after him, and I think he then gave it the name back before they could take the name.
He wrote back and said, look, this is my job, I'm in charge of California and I follow California law. You know, as the governor, you would expect him to do so.
Yeah, and this is the thing which we're again at the beginning of the topic with panzers and war crimes.
Oh, right,
in Europe, you always have this moral or pseudo-moral thing, this hypocrisy, that you always have to refer to some other stuff. This is also why I have in my new trailer this joke with politically correct global arms trade. Because for me, I mean, one of my Patreons said it rather nice. He said, I like my capitalism bloody and raw and not with a European moralistic approach to it. And this is the same for me. If you want to sell weapons all over the world, I won't judge. But I have a problem if you sell weapons all over the world and you're going around and being a pacifist or something.
Yeah.
It just doesn't compete for me.
Yeah. So like, how many people have bought Leopard tanks in Germany?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the top arms exporters. It were the United States, Russia, and for quite a long time Germany. But in Germany, if you do military history, basically everyone looks at you, are you a Nazi? So this is the thing where I say, okay, export all your weapons, but maybe have a little, not this approach, everything military is bad. I don't like this combination. So it's one or the other, but not both. And this is where maybe I'm a bit biased here because I'm a bit more affected than other people. So, but this is the thing for me. I like to be direct and honest, and don't bullshit me with, because I read politics, I read behind the lines, and you exported arms all over the place. So don't do me the peace talk. Yeah, it's like
you're happy to
I'm not a
their
stupid
dollars.
fuck.
Yeah.
Okay, I might be sometimes a bit naive or ignorant, but I'm not a stupid fuck.
So you focus primarily in World War II. Is that out of personal interest, or because you think that's just what people want to hear? Do you actually prefer? I actually prefer Cold War personally.
For me, it's really complicated, and as I always say, it's several factors. So one thing is I really like World War II, and the other aspect is I know also the most of it. So if I do a video on a non-World War II stuff, I have to invest about 2 to 10 hours more to get the basics right, because I often want to put it in the right context and everything. So I have to take way more reading. Then the same is for World War II. I have already a lot of blueprints of tanks, airplanes, artillery
for your graphics
pieces.
And whatever. Yeah.
So there's the logistical side. Then also when I don't do World War II, usually it's not that popular as well. So it's I have to look at this, and quite often I'm also more interested into it. So basically every time I take a non-World War II video, there's more risk involved, more work involved, and also my library is less well done. For instance, now if I do a World War II video, I usually I know five books more or less off the bat which I can use already.
Yeah.
And that I have already 5 books, but I have already 100 books about World War II or something. And if I talk like about the first Sino-Japanese War, like I did lately on my second channel, then suddenly, okay, I have to, I have this book where something in there,
but
bit,
I don't have the other
and
one,
the second
and,
one, so I have now 3 books where something in, and then I probably get an article or something, but that's about it. Whereas with Second World War, I have German sources, I have English sources, I have primary sources, I have everything. And then also, you look at it and then, okay, if I do something on the First World War right now, basically nobody's gonna watch it. Or very few people, let's say it this way.
So do you? I would assume that as a German speaker, you have an advantage in references and resources that we don't have in the US.
Yeah.
Are there any misconceptions that we have in the English-speaking world that you really wish we could strangle?
Any misconceptions? Let me think.
Just because, hey, this book came out in English and it has formed our impression ever since, and this book, it never came out in English and German only.
The thing with Guderian comes to mind, probably. But everyone in Germany got it wrong the same way, mostly. So actually James Coram was also one of the first who corrected a bit about Guderian. So and he is, I think, from the United States, and I think he's teaching now in England somewhere, or in United Kingdom, sorry.
Yeah.
So any major misconceptions around these? Actually, one of the most glaring misconceptions that comes all the time is related to the Battle of Britain, but not to tanks.
Okay, well, go on.
It's basically that the fighter command was near the breaking point, and if the Germans had continued bombing the airfields, then the fighter command would have broken. It's complete utter bullshit.
In fairness, I think that's been generally started to be corrected in the English language as well by now.
The Cambridge history of the Second World War pushed the envelope really hard. They have the chapter on the Battle of Britain, and it's Battle of Britain ? They really say like, okay, guys,
was this really
it was not really a fight. They said Britain had a stronger air force, and of course also a stronger navy, and the navy never came into the battle, because the Battle of Britain, if you look at it, it should have been also about Operation Sea Lion, if you look at the larger context, not just in the air. So there's the question mark, like, okay, not much of a contest here, guys. Move on. And they specifically address there are a lot of myths out there, and for various reasons, and but we're getting tired of this.
Gotcha. Oh, we got now Centurion. I would say the best tank ever designed. Even looks pretty cool too.
I have a really hard time, everything post-war tanks, I have a really hard time telling them apart.
Oh, can you tell this one?
It's a British one.
Yeah.
And it begins with a C.
It does.
So this is usually what I know about British tanks after World War II. It's really embarrassing, yeah. It's
Who are you talking to again?
I was suspecting it would be a guy that was probably the chieftain. I mean, there was not much tanks left already because the other one wasn't the chieftain. Then there's the Challenger and there's the earlier one. How is it called? The earlier one. The
Centurion.
No, I think way earlier.
Churchill.
No, I think it has a very edgy roof, a turret. Maybe I'm mixing something up.
You might be. I'm sorry. I got a little distracted also by watching the chieftain go. When the first tank I ever drove, and when I was growing up, let's say 15 years old, if I wanted to draw a tank, the tank I would draw would look, maybe by accident, but it would look a lot like a chieftain. It's like the way if I was drawing a car when I was 10 years old, the car was always a Chevrolet Caprice, which is basically up, over, down with two wheels underneath. Big boxy Chevy Caprice. So artistry was never my strong skill, has to be said. Neither, I should say, is video editing and sound editing, which is why we're doing this.
Yeah, I'm really interested how this will turn out. I hope you can listen to it.
If nothing else, if you can't hear us, you just look at the tank.
Just enjoy the show. I mean, it's tanks and visualized, so it kind of works.
That works. I heard somebody describe the Challenger 1 as a 1960s tank with new armor. And actually I think they're pretty much right. I mean, Chieftain is a 60s tank, it's got the same gun, it's got same fire control system as the later Chieftain, I guess. It really just new armor on it. Hopefully a better engine, I think.
So in terms of your videos, how are doing Cold War tanks compared to Second World War tanks?
Well, the difference is in funding. Most of my videos are products of World of Tanks, and World of Tanks does not have much way of Cold War stuff. So and there's, believe me, there's enough World War II stuff to keep me going for a while. So whilst I will occasionally deviate into T-55, which is in World of Tanks, or M103, it's very low on the list of priorities right now. I'll get there, don't worry, I will get there eventually. But there's still lots of World War II stuff to cover. And of course back then every individual country had their own tank. Now it's just everybody buys a Leopard.
This is a Leopard. Speaking of the devil,
they do have a special guest here again from the Netherlands. They got a Dutch Leopard 2 around here. So there's a couple of vehicles that the Tank Museum doesn't have. One is a Leopard 2, one is an IS-3. So they're both here today.
The Leopard, which variant? A4, I guess?
It's an A4. Yeah. It doesn't have the new armor, the pointed armor. And because the pointed armor package, the A5 package, is nearly 20 years old now, one of the problems that the German museum has discovered is that when they have the Leopard 2 there, and it says Leopard 2 and it's an A4 with the flat turret, people will go, that's not a Leopard 2, it doesn't look anything like the one that my dad drives. They're just not used to it. So they have now had to put a Leopard 2 A5 into the museum to say this is also a Leopard 2.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, we had the Leopard A4 in the Austrian army, and we have some, and I think we originally bought them from the Netherlands as well.
Yeah, the Dutch had a huge tank fleet that they started selling off. A lot of countries got them. The other thing I would not take away from this is the fact that we are sitting here in sunshine. This is England. We had sunshine yesterday, and we're pushing our luck with sunshine today.
Yeah.
So I have been told it may be rain tomorrow.
And here's the A4, speaking of the devil again.
Bigger devil. Now this also, it's a lot quieter too. This also is a nice enough tank inside. I mean, I haven't filmed it obviously, but I've been inside and it's quite comfortable. I can't really complain about it very much. It's interesting how, excuse me, it's sort of interesting how the designers have modified the internal volume of the tank, how ergonomics became a science after World War II. And the designers actually started paying attention to it. That said, they tend to design vehicles for the 95th percentile. So 95% of people are supposed to be able to fit in whatever it is that they're designing. And I was talking to a guy who's been involved in the armored personnel, the mine-proof armored personnel program. Things like the RG-31, the Dash, and so on. And one of the engineers came up and said, "Hey, I've had an observation from talking to the guys in the troops. Yeah, you know the way we build these things to the 95th percentile. Yeah. Well, it occurs to me that soldiers tend to be bigger on average than the average person. Yeah, and they also wear a lot more, like armor and webbing and so on. Yeah, most of them don't fit. No kidding."
I mean, there's actually an interesting anecdote about the Leopard 2 variant. I think the current one is A7
Yeah.
We.
We.
Yeah, because the we I think is and it's like the A7V, the first tank, the German tank. So
V,
this
V,
irony,
yeah.
and I think the we is small, and I assume it's for verbessert, for improved German. So this is quite an irony. I mean, it could be already outdated because I read this. I think.
Yeah, there is an A8 prototype bouncing around there right now. So there's this bizarre thing that they put a Leclerc turret on a Leopard chassis, and I'm not sure why they did that.
Yeah, I think this is the new Panther project they have with the French. It's like a Euro tank or something.
Well, we've tried that before, several times. Didn't work out well.
Yeah, I mean it sounds like a little bit like politics to a certain degree. I'm not sure. So.
And it's not going to be any cheaper either. Hey, look, the Centurion broke down again. It broke down yesterday as well. I do notice how easy it is to access the engine deck on the Centurion. He hasn't even rotated the turret. He's got the louvers up.
Yeah, that's practical.
Try doing that in the Panther. I'm told you used to be able to have lots of fun with those searchlights in Germany. Put it onto a white light high beam and just shine it into people's windows.
One, I didn't you mean the huge
Yeah, the big searchlight on the tank.
And you put
That's really powerful. You can see something 2 miles away.
Ah.
So you turn it on and you aim it into somebody's window. The aliens are coming! Hey, we need to make up. So in our last video, somebody complained a lot about the fact that we didn't mention Poland very much.
Yeah. I mean, people were actually expecting about something Polish units in Iraq or something, and also there were a lot of complaints that you got the nationality of one guy, or I think.
Yeah, the Danish guy, yeah, Norwegian, Denmark.
Yeah.
My bad. So I guess we have to catch up. Quick, say something about Poland. It's next to Germany. All right, we know where it is. Good. I was talking to one Polish lad here, and he said the Polish beer is terrible.
Really?
That's what he said. He said go to Belarus and Minsk beer is better. I said, that doesn't sound right, but...
I mean, I don't drink beer, so how should I know?
What's wrong with you?
Fun?
What's wrong with you?
Nothing. I just don't drink.
No, there's obviously something. You're contradicting yourself here.
Well, I mean, I always say in Upper Austria on character creation, you have the choice between casual drinker or fanatic. I don't drink.
Wonderful.
Okay, we have to cut that out.
I might do that. Or maybe I won't, because this is my camera this time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I note also I'm not putting big black boxes all over. Is that a European law, or are you just being polite?
What?
The big black boxes.
The thing is, with YouTube, I don't take any risks. and with all the regulations that are coming out lately, I think you even saw it in the United States. You probably got a lot of emails that you have to sign up for something new because they changed the policy. Because European law. As far as I know, in Austria, if you're in a public environment, you can get filmed. But you never know. So I was like, I mean, it was 2 to 4 hours more of work.
Gotcha.
So it was like not an easy call, let's say it this way. But I just, okay, let's just be sure, better be safe than sorry. It's the usual approach in my channel.
Well, I mean, there's certainly worse places to be on a nice sunny. What I need is a beer while I'm enjoying this. It's actually kind of hot. It's 28 degrees Celsius, which in American is 80s, mid 80s, I think. I've only been living there 20 years. I haven't quite converted yet.
Yeah, I mean, Celsius is quite easy. At 0, everything freezes.
Yeah, then 100 it boils.
Yeah,
At sea level, at a certain air pressure.
Yeah, but the freezing is the important part. And with Fahrenheit, what freezes at Fahrenheit at minus something?
Minus 32. I think. There is actually a logic behind the Fahrenheit scale. I don't know what the logic is, but there actually is one. I remember reading
like
that
there's
much.
some kind of logic, but
There always is. So I think we're in a bit of a pause while the Cold War vehicles egress. So the nice thing about Tank Fest, of course, it brings you to Bovington, nice big museum.
yeah, it's
I mean, you
excellent.
probably wouldn't have seen anything like this anywhere else.
So basically, you can see the tanks driving here, and if it's too loud or too sunny, you just go inside and check everything in there out. So
Have you been into the VCC yet?
in the conservation center,
Yeah.
yeah, also.
Yeah. That's like nose to tail, and this is the only time, Tank Fest is the only time you're actually allowed to walk inside the VCC. Usually you're just standing up on top of a viewing platform. Trying, way over there in that back left corner, is that a Samoa? Yeah, I think it's a Samoa. All I
Yeah.
can see is the hatch.
I actually filmed that one yesterday because
you
I was
did?
like, what? Do you have this one in here?
It used to be on the floor. It's one of the problems that museums have. I don't know if it's related to the topic that we started with about interpretation and putting context, but the idea of a museum just being a collection of vehicles, this is a Leopard 2, this is a Samoa, and so on, has gone away. You now have to put it in some sort of an interpretative setting, which means that there are fewer vehicles that you can place on display at any one time. Now there is an argument that what you do is you're supposed to rotate them in and out. So I come to Bovington this month and they're focusing on a lot of the early war stuff. And then I come back to Bovington next year and all the early war stuff has gone into the VCC, and then the late war stuff has come out. They don't do it though because it's just too much hassle to move everything in and out. So it's
I think it's more related to marketing to a certain degree, because then you have a certain exhibition and then you focus on and you can put it in a bigger understanding. I haven't been to the Panzer Museum in Munster yet, so I can tell, but I know they have a certain
But they're doing the
section.
same thing. They're changing from being a collection to being a more interpretative museum.
Yeah, also it's more in a bigger context. You can usually remember it better. So it's also for increased retention, I would say, and more sparking more interest. Because just listing, I mean, it's also a museum as a whole family experience. So if you have a bigger context, some people can get along with it better. Some kids are just interested into the data, whereas the adults probably might be more interested in the bigger context or something along those lines. So I think in this case it makes sense. Yeah, it kind of related to but I think the Panzer Museum also has something on the war crimes again.
I don't think they do now, but they're certainly. Oh, they do actually. Yes, they do.
But they do it very, as far as I know, they do it very subtle.
Very
so
subtly,
not
yes.
not the other approach, like we have to put it out. Yeah, so.
I was talking to, I've run into a couple of people here, so you're talking about this being a place for the whole family. It's a case of, yeah, I'm the husband and I got given a trip to Tank Fest by the wife. This is the wife who's probably now expecting a very large diamond or something in return.
Yeah,
He's not going to hear the end of this. For the next 6 months, I put up with the tanks for you for a whole day.
I mean, it was quite interesting. Yeah, the meet and greet usually. If there was a wife or girl, she took the picture. so what did you do on Tank Fest? I took a picture of somebody with my son or my husband.
Yeah, some person, I have no idea who he is, but my son says you're famous.
Yeah, we had this yesterday. Yeah.
The other one's the demographics. I'm running into all sorts of people here from the Netherlands, so I don't know what it is that the Netherlands are representing, but you're representing. A lot of Aussies as well for some reason.
Yeah,
which is a long bloody way to come.
I met Australians, Germans, United States as well.
A few, not so many.
I signed an NRE cap today.
Oh, I ran into Jim Warford. I was very surprised to find you may not know him. He's
No.
fairly famous, especially from maybe 10 years ago when he was doing a lot of the threat assessments and so on for the army. So he recognized me. I'm happy to say. I wouldn't have recognized him. Jeez, I met him 20 years ago. But anyway, it is interesting coming here as your face gets more and more famous now. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to start wearing a hat or shaving or something.
I don't. So far, I'm not that famous at all. I think 5 people recognized me yesterday, and at the meet and greet there were about 10 to 20
Well,
people.
that was me 3 years ago. I mean, all day maybe 5 people would say hi. Now to get from that end of the building to over there takes me 35 minutes.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, you'll get used to it, I guess.
I mean, I guess it will increase. I mean, I didn't show my face for quite a long time, and I also have a new look. So
You do. You used to have hair,
I used to have hair.
which would be useful today. It will keep it off your head.
Yeah, I just, I relocated my hair down here, so yeah, different Schwerpunkt.
Well, okay. Well, why don't we talk tactics then? All right.
Tactics,
So
oh my God.
even in American, we do talk about the Schwerpunkt. It's not in doctrine. I mean, you're not going to go into FM 30 operations. Dear God, if I got that one wrong, I am so screwed. And it is not. I don't recall ever seeing the word Schwerpunkt under there. We might say decisive point, perhaps. But the word Schwerpunkt has become known globally.
Yeah, it's quite a problem because I have actually an article lying around which I didn't finish, but it basically states everyone got it wrong.
Okay.
So this is the whole thing. I think Schwerpunkt was it was introduced by Clausewitz, and then it's the center of gravity. I think is some people know that's the correct translation, others say focal point, and then he says he argues no, it's a bigger philosophical concept and everything. So it's actually quite difficult to talk about this because I could probably get it wrong if I talk now about Schwerpunkt. Also, you could say tactics. I think Schwerpunkt, from what I understand, is more a strategic concept, and then you probably can trace it also down to operational and tactical level.
Yeah.
And then you probably have to go, oh, is it related to Auftragstaktik, which is also mission command tactics, which is also quite a lot of myths around, because a German wrote a book now on Auftragstaktik because he thought it was more of a myth. But then I think the result, I didn't read the book yet, but I read the review, and it was like basically, actually he tried to disprove it, and then he realized, no, there was something of Auftragstaktik, which some people actually is ascribed to that, which is going on. So this is the main problem in some cases, as you mentioned before, like with the misconceptions. But it's also on the academic side, and I have to read up on the German book, so what is the latest point of view from them. But again, there's also a different viewpoint on that it's not entirely, I would not necessarily agree to 100%. Like, for instance, as I lately talked with Barbarossa, we know nowadays it was a doomed operation.
Yes.
But as I did already a video where I look at it, so if you looked at the information that was available back then, also a lot of US Army and the British Army basically said, yeah, it will be a success. So also a lot of professionals outside of the German viewpoint said, okay, this might be a very successful operation. And for a long time, the academics to counter this, like, because there were a lot of people, oh, Barbarossa was a short call. For quite a long time, no, that's a bullshit. But so to a certain degree, to steer against this, I think they pushed a bit more farther that, like, Operation Barbarossa was doomed from the very start. And I think we probably will reach a point where it's a little bit more balanced. So we can say, okay, the operation, the logistical side was stupid, but they also assumed that the Red Army would break down like it did in the First World War.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's quite a few cases of external people that supposedly know what they're talking about getting it wrong. So Suez Crossing 73. I think the Russians said you need a tactical nuke to get through the line, and the Americans said no, at least you need 3 to 4 days. And of course the Egyptians did it in like 6 hours flat. The other one was the Falklands War, where you got people like the US Navy saying, nah, without a real carrier, not a chance. 6,000 miles away. Even some of the British senior leadership didn't think that the Falklands would work.
Yeah, I mean the Argentinians did a lot of things wrong there. I mean, they sent reserve units over there, bad logistics, and the inter-service rivalry. For instance, I think the bombs for the Air Force were not set correctly, and they had a lot of dots and other things. So there was quite, so if you don't know what problems the enemy force is having, like they did quite a lot of wrong. The Argentinian Air Force was, I think, doing the best stuff overall, but so if you don't know the internals,
the Navy pilots did even better because they had retarded bombs, so they could actually drop them lower.
Exactly, and these retarded bombs, they didn't transfer this knowledge to the Air Force. And you would, I mean, this is the thing. Did you, as an external, do you think along those lines? Okay, they won't pass the knowledge of retarded bombs to the other arm.
You would think. Well, now there are going to be people in the Royal Navy that say that they're. One moment. I wonder if he's going to tow the Centurion. They say that the Argentinians fixed it because the BBC announced on the radio that the bombs were not being fused correctly. Now, I haven't seen that actually get proven, that there was any association between what the BBC said and what the Argentinians did. But it has become part of the culture almost, that the BBC announced and the bombs went off. It's a bit like did the British abandon the French in 1940 when they all went on to Dunkirk? And to this day, there are French that feel that the British betrayed them. I mean, it wouldn't have made a difference anyway. They were hosed. The country was lost within 10 days. It was just a matter of how long it would take to finish cleaning up the pieces.
I mean, the question is, what would have happened if the French would have dug in Paris? If we turned Paris into a Stalingrad, they were I wouldn't say they were lost necessarily.
Well,
I mean, I
don't think it would matter. If the Germans took over the rest of the country, then what are the guys in Paris going to do? Yeah, we're a little hungry now.
Well, the question is, would the Germans just encircle it and wait, or would they go for the attack? Because Churchill basically said a city can swallow a whole army, and move on so far. I mean, the logistical side and everything. So I'm usually not so.
I think they can do it. Paris is up in the corner. It's up in the northeast, so there's plenty of other places to roam around.
Yeah, there's plenty of other ways, but you still have the logistics and everything. So you wear everything down. Your troops get more exhausted. So you lose the momentum.
Well, come through Strasbourg. Bring your lines of supply through Strasbourg at that point.
But what do you do if you put up stiff resistance in all major towns and go outside, and then you fight on and you really dig in, like what? So I'm a bit.
I'm not convinced, and that's even assuming that the French command structure could get their head out of their arse long enough to actually do it.
Yeah, this is the main problem. But for me, if you look at the whole numbers they have a lot of troops.
Oh, they have a lot. Yeah.
And if they really put together a stiff resistance.
But all the good stuff was gone. They'd already sent the armored units and the cavalry units up north, and you really had fortress units, a lot of them, but they were really just fortress and static infantry units, really. Yeah. Not exactly the A-team.
Yeah, I mean, but you don't need the A-team to fight a defensive war, to prolong it.
True.
And this is the thing. There's a huge difference between we're losing in 6 weeks and the whole country gets occupied to, okay, we're putting up a fight for several months and then the British can maybe do something else or something along those lines.
In hindsight, that would have been a futile expectation. I mean, you got the people going. I had a discussion online only last week, or not discussion, but it was definitely a very pointed comment pointed at me about how we were wrong to go into North Africa and waste our time mucking around to Churchill's tune when we should have just crossed immediately while the German army was being beaten up in Russia. And just immediately crossed the channel and gone into France.
This would have gone terribly wrong.
I don't think that would have gone well at all either, but apparently there are adherents to this philosophy. I mean, it's not as if there is no logic at all to it, but the reality is that we just didn't have the ability to transport all that much men and materiel across to fight a continental war.
Yeah, the logistics, the experience, the doctrine and everything. I mean, tactical loading, I'm not sure when you introduced tactical loading, probably.
Not before Torch.
So yeah, I mean, this
So
is-
yeah, the ship, tactical loading, if you don't know what it is basically the stuff you need most, or most frequently, or most initially. It's the stuff that is at the top of the ship.
I mean, and this sounds like common sense, but it wasn't until a certain amount of time. So this is the thing what people usually get now. With hindsight and with the knowledge that we have now, it's very different than you have never done in previous invasion you didn't do it for decades.
In fairness, I think there was something like that even in the Falklands, that some cargo ships turned around with material that was still needed, but it just wasn't offloaded yet because they couldn't get to it and had to go back.
Yeah, and because in military thing, you do everything under pressure and everything else, and you do what you order, and so this something doesn't translate. And even I sometimes pack my backpack wrong, and I did it for probably 50 times now. So from the outside, if you look at me from the outside, like, okay, Bernard, you're stupid, you packed your backpack wrong. Yeah, I did it already 50 times before, and I've probably more experience than you, but yeah, from outside sometimes you see errors that you wouldn't make. But it's the other way around as well.
There was a minor kerfluffle about 2 weeks ago. There was a British Defence Symposium or something like that. I can't remember what it was called. And somebody
the
had,
Uzi.
yeah, that was it.
Yeah, there was something wrong.
And you saw the Twitter comment that went out that there are now historians
Military
entering
historians who never served.
who have never served, which is fantastic because now the truth will come out.
What? Really? I only saw the first part?
Yeah, no, it was taken out of context. So it said, yeah, we are now being contaminated by I think the word contaminated was used by military historians who never served. This is great. Now we can find the truth.
It was quite ironic because the thing was taken out of context, and some people noted, okay, I will now get into a Lanchester and try to bomb Germany or something. And I said, okay, I will try to get on a FlaK to shoot at you. So along we, and for me, I would say I'm mixed about this, because to a certain degree, I mean, we had conscription also. I could have done civil service, but back then I thought it would be hypocritical to do civil service.
Okay.
So I went to the national service, and as I mentioned before, I did extremely poorly, and it was a very bad time for me, but I did it, and nowadays I can appreciate many years afterwards. Sometimes because if you learn something the very hard way,
Yep.
you need a certain amount
You're not
of time
going to forget it,
appreciate
yeah.
And some aspects are just that. Usually when I talk to veterans, I usually tell them before, you know what, nobody shot ever at me. I was never in a war situation or anything. I only know I went from civilian to boot camp, and people warned me never do this. And I realized it's a complete different world, and it's an experience you can't translate. It's a different world, and I assume that if you go from boot camp or from military to war, this will be a transformation on the same level, but a way higher magnitude. So that I can never really understand what you have gone through or what you experienced, but I know at least that I can't really relate to you on certain aspects.
Yeah, and I think people are taking it a little bit out of context even once they understood the real context. So for example, the question was, do you have to have lived through something in order to understand it? So the argument being, well, if you had to live through the Middle Ages, we couldn't have a Middle Age historian. You can't have a paleontologist talk about dinosaurs because they didn't exist. And there is also an argument that if you come from outside, you get a fresh set of eyes, and you may come up with a doctrinal thought, shall we say, I won't say doctrine because it isn't doctrine, but a strategic thought that perhaps by doctrine people are trained to think one way. So yes, there is good things there. But on the other hand, at the tank level, at my level, knowing that whole discussion we had before about the layouts of the gun sites, if you haven't actually conducted a defensive gunnery in a tank, you're probably not going to think about asking the question.
Yeah.
So I think, was it you said, I can't remember who we were talking to, when we were talking about peer reviews and how students help out to do the work for non-historians.
Yeah.
Historians write books on their own, usually.
Yeah.
There's almost never a partnership. I mean, when's the last time we saw a partnership between a complete academic and a professional military soldier at the same time, in the same book?
I mean, in Germany, there's sometimes quite a lot of military historians are also officers, but yeah, that's...
Well, yeah, but they've got that mindset, that mentality of what they came up with. The other side of it, and again, this goes right back to the very beginning conversation about the larger context. military history has generally only been professionally studied by the military.
Yeah.
I mean, their function is to analyze warfare and make better soldiers and make better decisions. Whereas there is no such function for somebody in a university who's studying cultural history. Well, if you're a cultural historian and I got that wrong, I'm sorry, but that is the perception that I have right now. Feel free to correct me later. But anyway, so the idea of somebody just from outside the industry looking at it and trying to make a separate assessment seems to be a very, very recent concept. And it's partially just because they're interested in it, and partially because they realize that war sells and they want to make a few dollars.
Yeah, I mean, military history is most of the most popular history out there that people subscribe to. And the thing is, with if you have somebody, I think if you have just non-military people writing the books, in some cases they might overthink some stuff. Like, okay, then you're, oh, okay, they did this probably this and this and this, and then no, it was just this problem we needed to fix. Like, and then you're like, oh yeah, now it's right obvious. Or
sometimes the spoon is just a spoon.
Sit the first time in a tank and then you realize you can't see shit. Because if nobody tells you and you never read it, and so some
even if you read it, say visibility was limited.
Yeah.
Well, this is limited visibility for me. This is limited visibility in a tank.
Yeah, for me, for instance, when I drove the first time a car which had a side window in the back, a van, it was like extreme limited visibility for me. For me, I was really uncomfortable.
That's still a luxury for an armored vehicle. Yeah,
but still in the front, I had 120-degree free view. So for a tank, it's like, what is your problem at all? And so I'm not sure if it's possible. You actually probably have to set up a guide for non-military people, for instance, where you need to be careful, or there sometimes might be a different approach to this. Like, okay, ask a military guy on these questions, and at the same time that you have something for military historians or that served in the military, okay, maybe get your second opinion about this on somebody, a non-military guy, because you're so much trained on this thing and that you never see it. I mean, I studied history and computer science, and the whole approach in certain areas is very different also from other sciences and other fields. I know, for instance, what you consider accurate in history in other fields would be, are you serious? Because it's a complete different level. It's a complete different level. I mean, it's empirical and you go to the archives, and the other one is we run 100,000 experiments in this, and we have now with a 0.005 percentage, it was always around this, and it's like, okay,
that's pretty good.
I have 3 documents that write the same thing.
All right, well, I think we've been at this most of an hour now. What time is it, 4?
1 hour and 3 minutes.
All right, so I think we'll call it quits and hope for the best, and hopefully the thing is still recording. So I suspect, I was actually very concerned that we wouldn't be able to talk about anything for another hour on top of the last hour. But again, this is sort of like the return video. So I went on his channel and I just rabbited on myself for 40 of 45 minutes. So now he has returned the favor and rabbited on for an hour on my channel. So now what we need to do is we need to go and invade Bismarck's channel.
Yeah, definitely.
Military aviation history, I did a joint one with him a while ago, and they're friends, so I'm sure we can figure out something. So I suggest the way we do it next time is that we meet in a C-47 Dakota, flying around.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Skytrain, sorry, the official term was Skytrain. Dakota was a civilian.
I might be a bit loud in there, as far as I remember.
Hold the microphone even closer.
Okay. Hold it very closely.
Sure, we can figure something out. All right, well, been fun having a chat here and listening to the tanks go by, and I'll let you get back to enjoying Tankfest.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, take care.
Bye.